Okay, so today I want to talk about something interesting, and this is, I'll fully admit going into this video, this is more of a general discussion about working in the music industry rather than something that happened in the news recently or something, and we're recording this video on Twitch, so it'll be on YouTube later. Hello chat, welcome. But the topic of this conversation is, are roadies, the people that work for bands, just failed musicians? Because that's an insult that gets thrown out a lot at roadies from a lot of different people. And the reason that this is on my mind is specifically something that came up. A friend of mine recently sent me something from Facebook memories and was like, hey, remember that time Chris Brown went off on you on Facebook and just demeaned you for like 45 minutes for being a failed musician? And I don't mean Chris Brown, the R&B pop star that dances really good and hits women. I'm talking about Chris Brown, the crazy psychopath lead singer for Trapt. So yeah, just by the clip that I threw in there, because I'm going to. Most everybody knows who Trapt is from their one song. To be fair though, Trapt has actually had quite a few big hit songs on rock radio in North America. But to anybody that follows along on social media, you've seen over the last probably decade or so, their singer has turned into a giant internet troll. And we have a lot of mutual friends in the music industry. My friend sent me this Facebook memory and was like, do you remember this? And I was reading through it again and I was like, wow, this is insane. And I want to read some of the clapbacks he gave to me and then talk about this, because this is a real thing. It's a go-to insult for a lot of people. So the topic of conversation that we were having was actually a very like politically triggering meme. Like, I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to read it because it's one of those political memes that makes people incite anger on the internet. But it was posted by one of Trapt's former touring techs who is still working in the industry. And Chris Brown responded with something like acting all high and mighty and calling people idiots and stuff. And I responded and all I said was, LOL, the wisdom of Chris Brown at it again. And that triggered him so fucking hard that it turned into like a 400 comment bash fest on here. So he starts kind of like insulting me just in typical internet banter fashion. And then I just decided to be a troll. This was quite a few years ago, so I was still kind of just an immature idiot, but I responded to him with a bunch of laughing emojis and said, at least you're headstrong and can take on anyone. For people that aren't in on the joke, the lyric to their biggest song is, headstrong will take you on. Headstrong will take on anyone. It's a tough guy anthem. So I started trolling him with his own lyrics just to be funny. And then he responds with this huge thing. But the part that I want to read to you is he said, you would never be able to keep up with me mentally. That's why you are where you are in your life and why I'm where I'm at. You're more than a few levels down on the totem pole. Intelligence helps us climb up in society. I know it must not feel too great being down where you are. And I responded and laughed at him and said, keep it coming. And he said, keep teching since you can't actually do what you intended to do by picking up guitar. So here's the little backstory. First of all, I was never a fucking guitar player, so he's a fucking idiot. And he's even more of an idiot because my band used to tour with them all the time. They took us on tour. I did lights for Trapt in exchange for them bringing my band on tour at a certain point. So it's not like we don't know each other. We've hung out. We've been around each other. He's seen me play. Now, you could argue that he's just saying guitar in the general sense of, you know, like electric guitar is a guitar, bass guitar is a guitar, whatever, but whatever. But we toured together a lot, so we know each other. He knows my band. He knows that I quit my band to become a roadie. And he continues by saying that failure is a product of intelligence. Some techs actually just want to be techs, but nah. You failed. I responded to him and said, like I just said, too bad I was never a guitar player and I did want to be a tech. I'm perfectly happy where I'm at in my life. Seems you're still trying to live out your glory days and act bigger than you are. And that hit a nerve with him because he just said, I'm just making money, bud. A massive amount more a year than you. And I run, own, and manage everything. Totally fine selling out clubs and making a few grand every night, either electric or acoustic, 5 to 6 nights a week. I love it. Oh, and that it doesn't include all the royalties and all that. Plus the dozen or so big fairs and casinos that pay 3 times the amount of club dates. And then he continued on with a bunch of other like personal stuff and then said I have an inferiority complex and all this stuff. So yeah, after that, I decided that this argument was going to go nowhere. And I literally just started trolling him with his own lyrics again and started quoting other songs and stuff like that. But now what I will say is that dude probably makes a ton of mailbox money. And by mailbox money, that's a music industry term like royalties. Some of their songs are still played all over to this day where he's probably making a lot of money from royalties. because Headstrong was so big. Headstrong was such a big song that Trapt's first tour ever, they were already in tour buses and semis. It's crazy. And then years later, when my band was on tour with them, they got smaller because they got irrelevant. And then they had to downsize to a van and trailer. Dude, going from only touring in a bus your entire career and then having to go into a van, that's rough. So rough, in fact, Chris Brown refused to do it. He flew to every show while his band and crew drove in the van and trailer. But anyways, we're not here to dump on Chris Brown. Again, this was years ago. I don't know how he is now. This is just something that a friend brought up to me in Facebook memories recently. But I want to bring this to the bigger conversation of, like we said, are roadies just failed musicians? Because that insult gets thrown around a lot in the music industry when somebody's trying to be demeaning or knock you down, and like they'll try and bring up, they're like, oh, you were never good enough to be in a band, so that's why you work for bands. And you know what? I guess that's kind of true. My band did fail. Like we never made a career out of being in a band. We toured for years, nonstop, all over, on big tours. And we never got signed. We never bought houses. We never we didn't live off of our music. Well, we did live off of our music, but it was very uncomfortable. Geek in chat said success is whatever you choose for it to be. I agree with that, and that's a great point to make. I consider that my band was successful. We had amazing times. We played crazy shows. Kids loved our music. We sold CDs. But if you're looking at that leveled success of the music industry of getting signed and touring and all that's like, we toured, but we never got signed. Like, we did fail. And that's why I quit my band and started working for bands, because I was tired of being broke and I wanted to make a career out of actually working for bands. And the truth is, I love working for bands. I love working for bands so much that I have no interest in being in a band again. I genuinely love working for bands. And I could honestly tell you that 99% of the people that are roadies that do work for bands love working for bands. So maybe some of them are failed musicians, or they just legitimately love doing what they do. Because there's a lot of people I've toured with that were never musicians to begin with. A lot of audio engineers that just love sound, that like learned how to do sound and went on tour with bands. There are merchandise managers that have never been in bands. I know tour managers that have never been in bands ever. So I always think it's interesting when that gets brought up as an insult, because I've had people throw it at me in YouTube comments too, where they're like, oh, this guy's an idiot. He just couldn't get in a band, so he works for bands, which it doesn't bother me. This is just something that came up that I thought would be fun to discuss. But I'd be curious what the general population's thought is on that too. Do you just assume that everybody that works for bands just failed at being in a band themselves? Vix just said in chat, bands are broker than the roadies since roadies get paid. At most of the levels I've been touring for the past probably like 7-8 years of my career, that is probably not true. The bands are making more than the roadies, but there have definitely been times in my career where I know for sure, without a doubt, I made more money as a roadie than the actual guys in the bands were making. Because when you're in a band, you own a business and you have to take care of all the expenses, which includes crew and stuff. Most bands make their money after all those expenses from a tour have been paid. And then you have to split it 5 ways with the band after the tour, or 4 ways or 6 ways, or in Slipknot's case, 9 ways or whatever. How many people are in the band? Sometimes your crew can actually end up making more than you, which is kind of a bummer if you really think about it, because it's the band that's really who people are there to see anyways. But no, that is true. There have been tours I've been on where I have made more money than the actual band members. Dirty Tramp in chat said, I always assume roadies were stoned out dudes who love music and don't want to go work at a regular job. Maybe in the 80s. But not now, no. I mean, most roadies nowadays are very professional. I mean, dude, being a roadie allowed me to buy my first house. I know what you mean by real job, but do not mistake this. Like, at a certain level of touring, this is a very real job. Dominic said, what is a real job anyway? I feel like that statement only comes from snobby suits. I feel like that statement comes from the older generation that's disconnected. They have a stereotypical image in their head of what a real job is. And if what you're doing isn't what they think it is, like, dude, for the longest time, like my grandparents who were 90, they had no idea. They did not understand what I did for a living. And even years into me being a roadie for like big bands, they'd be like, oh, you ever thought about going back to school and getting a degree and getting a real job? And I think it was around the time I bought my first house that my grandparents finally were like, oh, you make money at this job. I was like, yeah. And then when I started the YouTube thing, that blew their minds too. They were like, what? You make money on the computer? My My grandpa's like, oh, you got to be careful of that. That sounds like a scam. And I'm like, no. People aren't like offering to send me money. Like you put videos on YouTube and then Google puts ads on them and you get the money from those ads. And he's like, I don't know. There's a lot of internet scams out there. And I'm like, no, you're not fully understanding this. People aren't like asking me to send them money and then sending me money. Like it literally, like, I think he needs it. I think he gets it now. But like when I first started doing it, it was so funny trying to tell him what YouTube was. But anyways, this was more of a rambling thing today. I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys and got to jump over to a Rocket League tournament here. So thank you guys for hanging out. This is just kind of trash time content, but sometimes I like just sitting and talking about dumb stuff. So thank you guys for being here on in chat. If you're watching on YouTube later, you can always join us on Twitch at twitch.tv/TankTheTech. I'm also on a ton of social media at TankTheTech. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I'll be back very soon.